the data. What does the data tell us from the 2025 Azerbaijan Grand Prix that Max Verstappen won? George Russell finished second, which was amazing for him. Really good. And Carlos Sainz, yes, Carlos Sainz finished third. Lando Norris was seventh. Oscar Piastri had that accident, remember? Both the Ferraris didn't do too well. Lando couldn't pass anyone either. Yeah, so let's have a look. So this was the race pace. As you can see here, Verstappen, between the 140, really consistent. To be fair, he had the clean air. He was out in the lead. He wasn't really under any pressure. He could pretty much do what he wanted. And Russell just a smidge faster than Carlos Sainz. If I'm honest, and Lawson, let's be fair, Lawson really consistent. One of the more inconsistent ones, not Lando Norris. I mean, he was fairly up there as well. He was fast. Couldn't get past Tsunoda though. Is Lewis Hamilton. Look at that. I mean, compared to his teammate, really bizarrely inconsistent. But that could be also because he went really long on, I believe it was, I think it was it the hard? I've forgotten whether we started on the hard or the mediums. I'll have to have a look at that in a bit. But yeah, but as you can see here, Verstappen absolutely consistent. So what did Hamilton? Yeah, he started on the hard. So Hamilton started on the hard. So that kind of maybe explains compared to Leclerc, who I think was on the mediums. Let me hope he was now, because it's going to completely ruin. But yeah, Leclerc was in used mediums, so Hamilton was in new hards, which kind of explains both the difference of their race pace. Verstappen started on the hard. I mean, he was really impressive. He could have gone all day. Pirelli, I think, bought tyres that were too good for Baku, which is maybe why we had a Baku bore rather than an absolute, what we expected. So Verstappen went all the way to lap 40, pitted, no one, and may I mention, no one went on the softs. And there was all this promise of rain. Now, call me a cynic, but I can't help but feel about this promise of rain that they only do that to make you turn off. Because, I can understand why people were thinking, this is really boring, I'd rather do something else. Oh, touring cars is on the other side, let's watch that. And then turn the channel. But they were like, no, there's going to be rain, They kept talking about this rain that never, ever came. And part of me wonders, is that the reason? Is that the reason why people, why they were saying that, so people would tune in to the end of the race? Anyway, both Verstappen and Russell were very similar on their strategy. Hard to lap 39.40, pitting onto what was used mediums. Sainz used mediums all the way till 27. So, Russell, he used, obviously, that to great effect with the overcut, and he came out, I think, just ahead of Carlos Sainz, which was really good strategy from Mercedes. I'm not saying they screwed Antonelli. But yeah, Antonelli, he pitted on lap 18, which is really early on those used mediums, and they went from lap 18 to lap 51 on the hards. Now Tsunoda, to be fair, very similar to Max Verstappen, went all the way to lap 38 on the hards and then pitted on the mediums. Norris, because, he just couldn't get past, could he? Lap 37, the lap before Norris, and he would have got, I honestly believe, ahead. He would have got ahead of, potentially even Lawson and Tsunoda even, had he, let's be fair, had McLaren sorted out that 2-second pit stop, which is kind of sad. Hamilton, very similar to Verstappen, it seemed to be on the hards to lap 36, then on those mediums. He came out behind Leclerc, he caught up quite quickly. Leclerc let him go because Hamilton seemed to have, the delta. I mean, he had a lot newer tyres than Charles Leclerc, 16, 17, I think, laps newer than Leclerc. And on the mediums where Leclerc was on the hard, so they're going to be naturally faster. He let him through. Now, the plan was with Hamilton and Leclerc, Hamilton was going to because he couldn't pass Norris, I thought at one point he caught them really quickly. Leclerc the plan was for Hamilton to let Leclerc by again, but he apparently timed it wrong. Even Leclerc came out and said, it's only what is the difference between the 8th and 9th? It's okay. Yeah. These are not the big points, understandably, but someone didn't tell Max Verstappen and Perez that in Brazil. 2022? But anyway, or 23. But anyway, I digress. I think 23. I'm not sure. Maybe. Anyway, I digress. So so moving on from that. When you look at the bottom, it's kind of like a really similar story. There was only the one strategy was mediums to hards to mediums, stopping about in the lap 20s or the late teens. And then onto the hards, and the hards went a lot longer. So there was nothing fantastic, obviously, about the strategy there. But the average gap to Verstappen And this is in terms of the lap times was interesting because Russell was doing good. But when you look at Sainz, he really did earn that podium. So Russell, you know, just shy of 0.3 a lap. And when Russell came out behind Verstappen, he didn't really lose that much time, which makes you wonder, had Russell and Verstappen started together, we probably would have got more of a race. Just not to take away from Carlos Sainz, because the work was done in qualifying from Carlos Sainz. And he was only, what, 0.379 average of series faster than Antonelli, both Ferraris, wasn't he? I mean, that is quite impressive. Tsunoda as well. Obviously, the slowest being the Alpines. Leclerc and Hamilton very, very close in pace. 7/10 or 7.5 off Max Verstappen. That's still going to make for upsetting viewing. But the saving grace, like Fred Vasseur said, most people was the reason for this big discrepancy. Most people were stuck behind a slower car at some point because of the weird qualifying. Most of the time. So that kind of like describes why there was, you know, maybe a bigger gap to some to Max Verstappen, who once again did a fantastic job. So the standings, as you can see here, Max Verstappen led all the way. George Russell, when we follow the line, he overcut everyone. He overcut quite a few people. I mean, you know, from there, starting fifth, you know, kind of initially dropped down a bit, but then, yeah, he made his way. Kimi Antonelli passed him, and you heard a swear, didn't you? Lewis Hamilton got a good start, and then made a bit of progression, but not that much. Lando Norris, he lost to Leclerc, didn't he, on the restart, and then had let's be fair, was it? And then had that absolutely awful pit stop that completely ruined him, didn't it? Yeah, not good at all. So he got up here, and here was the pit stop, straight down there, the 4.1 second pit stop, which, yeah, was absolutely not good whatsoever. So these are the pit times. Average, McLaren 21.93, quite high. I mean, the second highest after Aston Martin, but the Aston Martin one, that was the 10-second one, I think, which didn't help the average time. With Fernando Alonso, he also got a jump start, distracted by Oscar Piastri, which was a bit sad. The fastest people were the V-Carbs. Well done them, by 0.02 of a second to Red Bull on average, but most people in the 20s until you get to obviously Alpine, McLaren and Aston Martin. Yeah, so, you know, really, really, really close. I mean, you're looking at, what, 0.75 of a second covering both V-Carb, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, Sauber, Williams, Haas. So the fastest being 20.25 by V-Carb and then 20.94 by Haas. So really, really consistent there, guys, on that front. Now, here's the interesting thing. Let's look at the top speeds. And Norris isn't really that bad. You look at Behrman, 361. Top speed, 357 for Bortoletto, then 357 for Albon, 354 for Lando Norris. That will be, you know, with the DRS and stuff, etc. So he had a higher top speed than some of the other cars, but then it makes it even worse, and I don't understand why he couldn't pass people. It was difficult, but I said going in, there were question marks about McLaren's top speed, and I think potentially there still are. I mean, he must have had a hell of a toe for that, because I'm not 100% sure how top speedy that really is. But there we go.